So good afternoon, Libby sir. Thank you so much for joining us here at this coffee table book initiative. To all the viewers who are seeing, I'll just quickly introduce Libby sir. Liby Johnson is the Executive Director of Gram Vikas, Odisha. He is a development management specialist with more than 25 years of experience of grassroots and policy level work in both the government and non-government sectors. He has a postgraduate diploma in rural management from Institute of Rural Management, Anand, Gujarat. Libby coordinated Gram Vikas relief, rehabilitation, and reconstruction activities after the 1999 Odisha super cyclone and post-Indian Ocean tsunami reconstruction efforts taken up by SIFFS, a Fisher People's Collective in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Thank you very much once again, sir, for being here. So just to introduce to everyone, we are trying to have this initiative to cover the life and journey of IRMAns so far. And I would like to start off with the first question, which is what was your life like before joining IRMA? What was it like and what motivated you to join IRMA?
Just prior to IRMA, I was doing a master's in economics. I had studied in Kerala till my BA degree in the first 20 odd years, during which time I had witnessed a lot of social and political work that was happening in my village. We was part of some of them. My grandfather was an active social person in the area, and I used to tail him, go with him for many things that he was doing. So I had a certain understanding, and I was in the NCC and the during which I also got exposed to some parts of rural India, which was very different from where I grew up in Kerala. So my intention of taking up a course in economics was more to understand development economics and probably become a teacher. But 1 year in one of the best economics schools in India, Gokhale Institute in Pune, 1 year there, and realized that that was not my cup of tea. It so happened that two of my classmates were applying for the IRMA test. They were in the second year, I was in the first year. They were applying for IRMA, and I just went along with them and applied. And of the three of us, two got into IRMA. Siddhi and I got in. And once IRMA came through, the Anand, Dr. Kurian, and what IRMA had been doing, I had very little understanding of what IRMA is and all that at that point in time. I think a lot of my worldview got influenced at IRMA. IRMA helped in terms of putting it all together of my previous experiences, but a fairly normal upbringing, normal growth, and I must remember that this is late 80s, early 90s, so very different generation from what it is today.
So I would say that you already had an inclination towards development before joining IRMA.
Yeah, development, whatever that meant. It's
okay.
Some kind of social action, yes.
Okay. And how was life at IRMA? How was it during the 2 years? What were the fun moments which you would remember, and what were the values and ethos which you took from there and carry on till date?
Many things. In fact, I owe a lot of what I'm today in terms of thinking, values, and way I do things. I owe a lot of that to my 2 years at IRMA. First and foremost, IRMA found me my life's partner. That I think is the biggest contribution. But on a professional, intellectual level, what IRMA did, at least during the time, I mean, for our batches, was giving us a very strong sense of asking why. And faculty members then, the institute as a whole then, generally nurtured a questioning attitude and also built the aptitude to question. It is not just the hawa of questioning for questioning's sake, but really being methodical about questioning. as you would expect a management school to do. The exposure that IRMA gave to rural reality, we had about 10 days of the induction field work in a village in Rajkot. Then we had the 2 months of village field work, the VFS, in a village in Chittoor in Andhra Pradesh. And fortunately for me, both my MTSs, we had the management traineeship segment, one during the summer and one in winter. Both of them for me was in Bihar, and very, very substantial exposure to what the reality in other parts of India is. This was, and classrooms were also fun. Classrooms were fun because we were doing a lot of management. And I remember sometime during the second term, some 8 or 10 of us got together and made a formal complaint and then a presentation to a faculty committee on why we thought some of the case studies were not being relevant to us, and asking for more specific Indian case studies, rural case studies, etc. So, and the institute allowed all that, and then we engaged with faculty members, with the administration from, what I often believed were certain equality of positions, not a very, very complicated power structure at that time. So overall, it stimulates, kind of exploration, questioning, and gave the backup to do that. The library was a beautiful place to do that. Some of the best readings I've had all these 51 years has been in the IRMA library. Yeah, to summarize it, IRMA made me what I am today. So there's no doubt about that. As a professional, as a person who works in the rural development sector.
Definitely. So that's wonderful to hear. And how was your career immediately after IRMA? Did you join the cooperatives or did you get into the voluntary sector? What were the immediate learnings you took away from IRMA and so on?
So I was clear that I was not made up for business management, and the choice was clear, and I went and joined. So on campus, so our batch was also a very, very path-breaking batch. PRM15 that passed out in '96. We were the first batch to actually, at that time, move out of 19 of my classmates out of the 51, moved out of the formal campus placement and set up their own placement, and outside the designated sector. We only had the designated sector, and that included cooperatives and a few development, NGOs, and a couple of consulting organizations had come in by then. EDA Rural Systems was there, International Development Enterprises was there. ActionAid had come in during our year, which is not grassroots organizations. So I went to Bihar. My formal offer was with SIFFS in Trivandrum. Vivek of the first batch had come and recruited me. But then for reasons of the heart, I decided to go to Bihar because that's where I thought would be better than going back to Kerala, where I originally was from. So I went to work with a small organization called Aditi in Bihar and spent almost 2 years there. And then moved to Odisha, where I joined Gram Vikas and continued there till the tsunami came. Then went back in 2004, 8 years after, 2005, 9 years after Vivek made me the offer, I went back to work with SIFFS and the cooperatives, the fisher cooperatives in southern India, in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. But it was largely the tsunami reconstruction project. After 2 years in SIFFS, I joined Kudumbashree, the State Poverty Eradication Mission, where I spent about 8 years. And then in 2017, after a year with UNDP, because I wanted to explore different types of bureaucracy. I had worked with panchayats, I worked with state governments. During my time in Kudumbashree, I also worked as part of teams that were doing the National Rural Livelihood Mission design. So I also wanted to experience the global bureaucracy and said, let's go and work in the UN for a year. And I had enough of it in a year, and the offer from Gram Vikas came. So I came back to Odisha in 2017. That's basically been my profile. And all these years, I've worked either with or around communities, rural communities, except for 3 years in Kudumbashree, where I also handled urban poverty as a subject matter. Yes, that's been my professional journey.
It's glad to hear you've touched various organizations and you had some wonderful experiences. I just wanted to ask, during these years, were there instances where IRMA had some strong, foundation, I would say, as to, or IRMA helped you in making some tough decisions and so on?
Like I said earlier, a lot of what I am today professionally as a social development professional, I owe it to IRMA, and
Okay.
that is clear. Uh, how these things play out is you don't, all of a sudden you realize that this is something that we handled there. At least in the first 10 years, this used to happen. After that, I think you kind of grow
Okay.
out or move away from that. But IRMA is still a huge network. I mean, it's such a social network even today that if I want to turn to someone with a problem, I have a problem and I have to turn to someone. I think 8 out of 10 cases I end up turning to an IRMAN. I mean, it could be Vivek from the first batch, it could be CP or Matthew Jarian or Satish or Annie or Apurva, Naren, Nivedita, closer Priyanka, or even younger lot, Anusha or Rashia, who's from PRM33. There's a whole bunch of people in the network. Of course, Bala and Suvo from PRM24. So I think that is, at this stage of my life, I think it's that social capital, that network that IRMA has created for me, which is very important than, say, what happened 26 years ago on campus. But overall, I think that's the contribution that IRMA has made.
Yeah, I think this is interesting as well, because IRMA has somehow created this social network, and you have some strong options, reliant options you can reach out to. Another point is, if you could highlight probably some key achievements in your life so far, what are the 2 or 3 standing out pointers in your career? It could be anything what you feel, even the tsunami project you took up. And
I think the fact that I have not gotten tired of doing this is probably the single greatest achievement. And I still wake up every morning wanting to do something. And that I don't think is it's because of me. It's because of people around me. It's because of situations that I get introduced to, or challenges that come my way, that rural development, social change processes in rural India is an area where you become part of. I think that is a very important indicator for me of my happiness and what I define to be success, that I've not gotten tired of what I've been doing. In terms of specific instances where I've been able to contribute, I think bringing in a certain amount of managerial rigor into organizational processes, be at Gram Vikas earlier, even now also, but now I'm in a very strong position of influence. When I started in Gram Vikas, I was way down the pecking order, but still was able to, bring in certain rigor, certain principles, a certain way of doing that was better than which was not there earlier. That I think is a very important matter. And I'm also quite proud of what I was able to do with the Kudumbashree National Resource Organization as part of Kudumbashree, in terms of laying the foundation stone for, the foundation for that, the initial processes. And I realized the one subject that I performed very poorly at IRMA is where I seem to be doing a lot more today, and that is human resource
Okay.
management.
Okay.
That's definitely whether it was with Kudumbashree and Naro, now with Gram Vikas, um, putting in place human resource systems for organizations that work on social change. I think is an important element of. I mean, if I were to write a book tomorrow, it'd probably be about how you manage talent within these organizations in conditions of extreme shortage.
Okay.
How do you create talent from nowhere? Is probably an area that. What else? Of course. So a group of us friends got together on a kind of a voluntary basis and designed a business management program for micro enterprises and people who support micro enterprises. And we had a group of people, some from IIM, some from BITS Pilani, couple of IRMAns. That course it is now a significant part of the enterprise promotion effort of the National Rural Livelihood Mission, where I could play a very important role in terms of uh, ruralizing the business management based on what we learned at IRMA, and also what I was exposed to and experienced during my stint in Odisha, Bihar, and several other states. Yeah, I think overall that would be it.
Wonderful. I think this is more than enough. So, some of really interesting pointers, and I hope you get to complete that book on human resource management someday. uh, anyway, so one last pointer as to how you see your sector or the area in which you are working growing, and what would be your message for the aspirants who want to join IRMA or the aspirants who want to join such sectors?
Well, there is a huge disconnect within what you just said.
Okay.
Aspirants for IRMA are no more aspirants for social change in India.
Okay.
That's a reality, and I will not waste our time talking about it, but that remains real. IRMA has very little to do with social change processes in India anymore, in rural India at least. So that be it. But in terms of the social development processes, social development scenario, social change scenario in the country, we seem to be regressing. So when I first came to IRMA in 1994, that was a time when one wave of social change processes. That was probably the second wave. The first wave was the Gandhian Sarvodaya, Bhudan, and that wave. And the second wave, which started in the mid 70s, which was more the professional sustainable development process. Pradhan, Vijay, Deep, Joe, a lot of these people, Mairada, a lot of these people had pioneered that. And I think towards the end of 90s, we found that process ending. And since then, the non-government social change, non-government community development process, I mean, the sector has been on a wane because government is probably today the biggest NGO in that sense. I'm seeing going back to the early 80s situation on many of the indicators of social development. So immunization coverage, for an example, in many parts of India is now deteriorating at a very rapid scale. Quality of primary health care availability, cost, and access is despite improvements in technology in road access, electricity availability, telephone access, etc. Primary health care is now becoming very expensive. Quality of primary schools in the government sector, or I mean in general, in rural areas, unless children are sent to a residential school, which anyway will cater to only about the capacity is only 50% of the demand. So on very basic development indicators, basic needs approach, which was what the early social development sector was handling. we seem to be going back to a difficult situation there. Inequities are increasing. So within villages also, you find 15 or 20% of the people who are traditionally not the elite. Now the new elite is forming in with respect to political access to political power, economic opportunities. A lot of others actually falling down in that regard. So in terms of the need for somebody like an IRMAN from 20 years ago, I think is that demand is going to increase. Unfortunately, IRMA will not be there to supply to that demand, which is real. And I mean, there aren't many institutions. There are probably no institution today in India which could supply a Vivekanandan or an Apurva Oza or an Narendranath. Forget a Sanjoy. There isn't an institution of that kind today, and that is sadly a reality, because a lot of them teach development, a lot of them teach social work, but very little rigor in terms of actually going to the ground and understanding, identifying the problem, understanding them, and being able to resolve it with the panchayat, with the local communities, understanding the political dynamics, and then building institutional processes around that. I think there is a great need for that, and unfortunately today there seems to be this technology solution or so-called technology solutions being seen as easy way out, and I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
So I'm not very hopeful in the general sense, but on the other side, what is hopeful is there is a lot more energy and ability and interest among rural communities to change themselves or to bring about change for themselves. And so maybe we will not be needed. And that would be a very hopeful situation.
That's also interesting that people not be needed. But yeah, this is a great message, and I hope this goes out to the wider audience in an impactful manner. Any closing remarks before we close this interview? Any one key message you want to just send out to?
See, the 2 years in IRMA, even if you don't go out to work in the development sector, or like I met with 6 youngsters from PRM15 the other day who've come to Odisha to do their village fieldwork segment. And the only request I made to them was, boss, this is probably the only time you live in a village. Use these 8 weeks to the way that you would be a manager. You would get into a situation, understand the problem. Please do it in those 8 weeks. It may not help you with your job application to I don't know, who do they send it to, Misho or any of these places,
Yeah.
But what it will do to you as an individual, as a person, if you can be honest about these 2 months of village fieldwork and trying to understand what the other side of India is, I think that continues to be, while I sound very negative about IRMA's contribution, I think the 2-month village fieldwork segment is probably the biggest contribution IRMA continues to make for youngsters in India, exposing them to the reality on the other side. And my only earnest hope is that youngsters who go from IRMA, who go to village fieldwork, actually use it as an opportunity to learn and not take it as a burden that they have to somehow manage because whatever number of credit the segment carries. Because it's true, out of the 270, I don't see more than 7 or 8 ever going to live in a village. A few of them may visit villages as part of their work, but living there for 8 weeks is a luxury that you will never get to afford. And we look at the village fieldwork as a luxury that you will never be able to afford ever in your life.
True, sir. Yeah. So that's why we are also just trying to kind of bridge this gap by talking to the senior IRMAns and maybe even publish this in a book format. But hopeful of that, let's see. Anyway, sir, thank you so much for participating in this and sharing your views across. Hopeful that this will come out in a positive manner.
Thank you, Shreyus. Happy to talk to you.
Okay, sir.
Right.